Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Guy Arazi. I'm the Director of Product Management for Vicon, and I'll be giving the presentation today. We have about 30 seconds according to my clock, so we're going to let a few more log in, and then we can start. All right. So once again, welcome to our webinar. My name is Guy Arazi. I'm the Director of Product Management for Vicon. And today I'm going to be giving you the presentation about Valerus 21.1. This is a first presentation, first webinar out of a session of 3 webinars that we're going to give. I'm going to provide an overview of what we're doing in this version, how it works within the Valerus solution, and the next presentation. The next webinar is going to be a little deeper and technical, and they're going to touch on specific features and functions that we'll see. I'll mention those as we keep going, and we do encourage everybody that's interested to seeing the deeper side of how we configure some things, program them, make them work in Valerus, to register and join our continue webinars. So we're going to start right now, and I hope you're going to enjoy the webinar. So today we're talking about Valerus 21.1, but let's say a few words about Valerus, which is our VMS platform, and one we believe we've created for many users and different stakeholders within the VMS user arena. I'm going to touch, when I talk about the different features and functions, I'm going to try and give you guys a little exposure to the thought process behind adding the features, those specific stakeholders and users these are targeted towards, and what are we doing in terms of providing a solution as well as taking the platform forward. I like to start and give a little feel of our holistic approach in Valerus towards the different feature and functionality. And Valerus, yes, it is a video management system, but there's many ways to do things, including manage video systems. I want to touch on some of the things that we keep kind of in front of us and mention them in light of the ease of use and the users. Things like a streamlined installation that goes to the installer, the people that needs to put the system in place, make it work as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and goes to the people behind them that need to manage the system, add the users, build the recordings, set up the different things, follow up some cyber threats, searches once we have recording and we have video, how easy it is for the operator, that's a new user that we're talking about, to find the information he needs to find, to look at forensic information, to play it back, to export it for evidence. Data protection, things like redundancy, protecting the video, event and alarm management, which is a major feature we'll touch on today in version 21.1, and goes to how do we sit in front of the system and utilize that information in a way we can investigate alarms, classify them, and move forward. Also in this version, excuse me, talking about multi-system interoperability, working with other systems, external third-party systems that want to integrate into Valerus. That's a new addition. I'll touch on that as we keep going. Cybersecurity, definitely a big thing in today's world. Everything is becoming cyber-related, and more exposure to cybersecurity threats. We'll show you what we're doing and where we're taking Valerus in terms of cybersecurity. And last but not least is still the world of mobile apps, using the phones, viewing video, as well as streaming video from the phone back to the VMS. All this wheel provides a look at the holistic approach and how we're trying to keep going with the platform with users in mind, but adding these slices to the pie that makes sense. So today we're talking about version 21.1. And in this version, very much like other versions, we're trying to provide a blend of solutions and features that will not only answer needs for new features, but also enhance the user experience when working with a platform. And sometimes features that may look small development-wise provide a huge advantage to the users and save them time and save them money and are worth really in weight much more than the worth of them in development. So we're trying to provide within the development of every version a blend of features that will be some new features taking us forward, looking towards other capabilities, but also to provide those quote unquote smaller features that are really big for those that need them. So we will be looking at a few things today, all 21.1 related, starting with our client performance indicator icon. That's going to be the first thing we're going to show. Going forward with some of enhancements we've made for our snapshot tool, a new module for access lists. We'll look at that. Integration framework. We talked about that in one of those slices in the pie. Partners, how do we take advantage of those and what can we do with them in the VMS? Alarm management, major feature in this version. And last but not least, we'll talk about what we're doing with our health dashboard, which is another piece of Valerus we're growing as we keep going. So we'll start with the client performance indicator, and this is a new indication where it allows the users to view some of the efficiency of the PC that they're running on. And this is something that we were requested from the field a few times and goes to something that's maybe not a major feature, but is very helpful as you work through the system. And I'll show you how it works right on the Valerus interface, but the idea is to identify overloaded resources that are potentially affecting the system. What does affecting the system mean? It means that the system may not be displaying right, may be slow, may be jittery. We'll see that. Just before I show you the feature itself, I want to point out we are looking at Valerus 21.1. I opened the About screen here just to show you. You can see the license here, the activation key for Valerus, which is one key for the whole system. And just below at the end there, keep that in mind, that Valerus ID that you're seeing down here, this is something we'll talk about when we talk about access list. Remember that Valerus ID, I'm going to mention it as we keep going. So the client performance gauge, this new indication is an icon that we added right here on the top of the main screen. This is the main monitoring screen. So in this bar right here, you can see this gauge. And right now it's not a gauge, you can see an icon and you can see a dot. And we took the traffic light approach here, where this dot can have three colors, green, yellow, or red. And very simply, we can say that green means everything is healthy, yellow means we're a little more loaded, and red means we're overloaded. I'm going to show you what that looks like as we keep going. And the idea of the traffic light is to give the operator something that they can relate to and easily understand. See, when I hover, we get a better gauge that actually gives percents of the performance usage and what this PC is on. And it's worth mentioning that every computer is going to have a certain level where it gets overloaded. Better computers will be able to display more cameras, to do more tasks and do more things. Slower computers will get overloaded first. And to indicate it will allow the operator to know when he goes into a state which is, let's call it, unhealthy. So to give you, a look of it, I'm going to drag over a view that I prepared in advance. And I have a map, I have 3 cameras. You can see that the system is still running well. My dot just went yellow. When the camera's open, it will go green because everything is going to settle. But this is an example of the system working without too much of a load. But what happens if I'm trying to display more video, or maybe I'm using other programs in the background and I'm loading the system? What I'll do is I'll replace the map, which is a static thing, with one of my 12 megapixel fisheye cameras. And 12 megapixel, which means a higher load, is going to start pushing my PC a little further, and it's going to take more resources. I'm going to hover here, and you can see we just went into the red zone. So we pretty much got into, when you look there at the gauge, around 80% of our CPU. We do indicate some things ahead of time. We're not going to wait for 100% and stop working, but you can also see the video starting to get a little jittery, and freezing, and the PC I have here, which is not very powerful, starts struggling. Every user can relate to a red dot and know, hey, I'm in the red zone, I shouldn't be there. I need to do something to reduce the load on my computer and to be able to relieve some of it and going back into my green or my yellow zone. So I'm stopping the camera, which makes us jump right into green, and I'll bring the view back. And the map, like we said, is really not taking too much power off my computer and allows me to go back. I'm talking about the operator here, primarily looking at the screen, but let's not forget that behind the operator, and I'm going to pause for a second here and finish that sentence. Behind the operator, we have an administrator, and we have somebody that's going to have to try and fix the problem if it occurs. So if there's a clear indication to the operator, we may actually prevent a lot of the problems that we'll see. The second feature we'll talk about is the reference snapshot in our system. And this is an enhancement. This is another example of something that's not necessarily big development, but helps in a very, very significant ways to the people doing the installation and putting the system together. So we've had this snapshot option in Valerus all along, where we allow to add a snapshot next to the video channel's properties. And that's meant to give the operator, not the operator, but the person configuring the system, a visual reference to where the camera was pointing at and what picture was seen from it, and so on. The change in what we've done in this release is that before we could take a snapshot of an individual camera. Why would you do that? For example, if I set up my camera during the evening time, I may want to take a fresh snapshot in the morning where I have full light and I can appreciate the field of view better. And we could do that for a single camera, and that's not anything new in Valerus. What we've added is an ability to do that for all the cameras in one shot. So think of an as-made type report where you end the installation and just going in there to show you how it looks right on the screen. You want to take a snapshot of all cameras in the morning. It's bright, it's nice, you know all the shots are going to look great. This is my reference picture here, and I'm just going to show you what happens when we click the Take Snapshot button. The dialog that opens now gives you an option to choose this specific camera, or it gives you an option to go to the All Resources, which will take a snapshot of the entire system, all cameras all together. I'm just going to take a snapshot of the one camera just to save time. I don't want to go into that. I think the concept is clear, and we'll show you more when we do the individual, more technical presentations. We'll show you more where this comes into play. I'm going to jump next to the next feature, and that's the access list feature. So we're going to something that's a little heavier, and access list is a term that the IT kind of oriented folks here will have an easy time to relate to. That's something that's done in switches and networks, where we determine which computer connects to which VLAN and some other things in IT. The concept here in Valerus goes to the fact that in Valerus, which is a web browser client, it's very easy to go to any computer on the network, and if it has access to the Valerus application server, we can connect to the system and log in. Now, clearly, there's an authentication mechanism where you have to provide your username and you have to provide your password and you have to authenticate with the system to log in, but till today, you could do that from any computer that has access to Valerus. The access list feature here is we're adding the ability to identify and specify specific computers that are allowed to connect to the Valerus system, basically adding a layer of security, cyber-wise, to Valerus system. So it's not only who are you and what your credentials are, it's also which machine are you connecting from. And if you think about it, the larger your system is going to be, it's more likely that there are certain computers and certain areas in the organization that are not supposed to be used for video management type use, even if the user themselves are allowed to do that from their dispatch computer. So we can and will, in bigger organizations, go and eliminate certain computers from being able to connect to the system. So Valerus will check whose machine or which machine is this, and only then will check if the user is authenticated, and will keep going. In Valerus itself, you can see this entry under system. You can see here we have this access list option, and I'm showing an empty list here. Again, something we'll go a little deeper into in the technical presentations that will follow the webinars behind this one, but we allow to put in computer details by their IP address, which is not very common, by their MAC address, which is incredibly common, and by the Valerus ID. Remember what we shown at the beginning of the presentation, that ID that we generate. So we decided that we'll also generate a unique computer ID. In addition to all of these, you get to pick which one to use, but we provide you with all the tools to be dangerous and do that at any level that you choose to do things. Once an access list has been formed here, those computers allowed can connect to Valerus. Those that will be excluded from the list are really not allowed to connect to the system anymore, thus adding that layer of security we talked about. The next thing, I'm going to talk about integration frameworks, and this is a little bigger feature. I'm trying to take us from smaller to bigger features here. And I showed that slice in the beginning talking about the holistic approach and what we see in Valerus. And we know that even though we believe Valerus is a great system and we can provide excellent video management solutions, we can't do everything. It's unlikely to think that we can develop every new feature and every new capability that the industry offers and needs to use. And there is a lot to say about playing nice with others, being able to work with other systems and enjoying their capabilities, which may be unique, along with the video that we provide, and know what to do with it. The first example I'm showing here is access control. There's a few things that are just classic in terms of integrations with video. Access control is one of those things. I'm showing you the alarm management screen here, and I'm going to say here, and I'm going to mention it a few times as we keep going, integrations and third parties are very tightly knit with our alarm management. We need those because we need their events and we need alarms, and I'll show you how that works together as we keep going. But if you focus on the lower end of the screen here, you can see how together with a live video image, we can get the card holder picture, their name, all the information that the access control system has. And we've done the integration starting with our VAC system, but this framework we created is open for us to add more integrations, and that's what we plan on doing. The second integration, and I'll show you a live example of how it works, is with license plate recognition. And that's another classic, if you want, for something that can take video from the VMS, do analysis of the license plate, and there's many good solutions out there. We chose to start with Neural Labs, who's a partner of ours for a while, but there's many others we plan on adding, and those complete each other with taking video and going and following them with events. Again, I'll go into configuration just to show you what we have here in the background, and you can see there's a few new things here. Actually, you can see an entry here called partner resources, and those LPR sensors and doors, which we create from the LPR system and the access control, and also an integration partner area right at our network devices. We need to add those partners into the system, and you can see that we have this option here with an add partner. Again, I'm going into a very high level explanation here. This will be discussed in very fine details with examples and a lot of good things for you to follow in our follow-up webinars. So please make sure to join them and be there. When we add the partners, they generate those partner resources like doors, like LPRs, and we can use them in Valerus to generate events, to create alarms. And like I said, this is very closely put together with alarm management, because once we have this in place and have these resources to work with, it makes sense that we'll now say, oh, when somebody forces a door open, I want to know about it. It needs to show as an alarm. I maybe want to see the camera. I maybe want to sound the siren. We maybe want to do other things. And those are part of the capabilities that we're adding. So, we're talking about alarms. Let's move on and look at this alarm management suite. And alarm management is a big term, and it's a major feature in what we've done here in Valerus and version 21.1 in specific. It is an addition which shows you where we're trying to take the system. It allows things like working in an environment that need to actually go through a stacked list of events and sort through them and investigate them and look at them. Few goals that we've put in front of us and solved here is one is to support a multi-user, multi-location operation. We work in many locations that are not just a singular small office building. Things like schools, where you'd like the security guard in different schools to be able to work on his alarms while somebody else works in other places on his alarms, and not necessarily both at the same time. We want to be able for managers, administrators, supervisors, say in a dispatch type operation, where we know somebody's receiving the events and he's dispatching others to review them, to be able to sign alarms to people, to say, oh, you need to handle this alarm in that event, and somebody else will handle another event, and we can track it and see who's doing what and which alarms haven't gotten the attention, and many other things. We have camera recordings. Obviously, the VMS is based around camera recordings, and the power of the VMS is the video recorded, tying it to the different events. And this goes again to those partners. We're getting partner events that don't necessarily have their own video, but we know when they occurred, and we can tie the live feed or the playback feed to the time of the event. We have excellent evidence to work with. And in general, provide the tool to follow procedures and to make sure that our operator looking at the alarms, or maybe it's an investigator, or maybe it's a alarm monitoring center when there's somebody there, follows the right procedure as he looks through the alarm, because not all alarms are the same. Some require certain actions while other requires other actions. I'll show you live examples for all of that right after this slide. I'm just trying to give you the context of the things here. So up here, you can see a new tab in Valerus. The ones next to it, monitoring, search, all these have been here for quite a while. And we've added a new tab. And I did mention that the alarms is a pretty significant piece that we've added here, and it has its own screen, because there's very dedicated work that needs to be done here. That number is the number of alarms waiting for us inside. Actually, we have 4 right now. And you can see up here that we created sort of two pieces of the screen. On top, we have the list of events, and you can see some names. I'm going to go into configuration and give this some context so you see what generates it. And here in our advanced area, we have the alarms tab, and the resources that can trigger alarms will be those external ones that I talked about, but also all the Valerus resources, the video channels, the analytics that comes from the cameras, inputs and outputs, and so on. So when we look, very quick look at our new alarm screen, I'm going to show you 2 alarms that I created, and in the follow-up webinars, we'll go into the fine details of creating alarms and what can we do and what can we add over there. You can see I have 2 alarms. One is called Alarm 1, you can see it there. And you look in here, I'm going to skip the settings, but you can see that it is a digital input alarm. So basically, I have my dry contact, it's connected to digital input, and when it flips, normally open to close, I'm going to get an alarm. I do have another alarm here, just to show you guys the difference. It's a motion alarm, and you can see that this resource from a motion alarm, I did point to the fact, you can see the toggle, it is disabled. So I do have it. I made sure we're not getting alarms. I don't want to get overwhelming number of alarms right now. Just wanted to show you that we create them and really pause them. And this is a motion detection alarm, so it will be coming from a camera. Different resources triggering different alarms. So now we'll jump back to the alarms tab where we were before. And now it's going to give a little more context to the names that we see here. So here we get the list of the different alarms that come into the system. And one thing to say about alarms is that there's many events going on in the VMS, like even in the third-party system. We don't necessarily want to alarm the system about any of them. So when we create those alarms, as shown in the background, we need to pick which events are worthy of becoming an alarm and which need to go in the database, but important to understand everything goes into the database. So when we go into search and run queries, we can see every event that happens, regardless if it was an alarm, if it triggered or not. I'm not going to show the search here, but keep that in mind. We're not losing events because we're not defining them alarm. On the contrary, we're elevating the important ones to be an alarm. And in this list, we have some IDs that we provide. You can see the alarm name, alarm 1, we looked at digital input, like I showed you in the background of things. And the concept here that we can pick an alarm from the list and do the investigative work. We can sort things, different people work in different sorts, but when we go and pick an alarm, we're going to get all the information that was configured to come with. Live video, playback video, this is simulated, a map in this case, which would give some situational awareness, and this is a fully active map. Hovering will give you a snapshot. This is from our parking lot. There's an area that we have here on the right for additional information. I'll show you how that looks with a third party, and I did mention the response procedure. So here I provided a very simple procedure: go outside, dial 911, but we have a full procedure editor that allows you to create standard operating procedures that go with each and every alarm and tell the operator which steps to follow as he goes through them. Up here, you can see some action buttons. Handle, I can take over, I can assign it to somebody else, I can look at some history. And when I handle an alarm, it really goes under my name. You can see it says admin down there. And once it does, I can do really the ultimate thing, and that is close the alarm. In every alarm management type environment, the end goal needs to be that I don't have any active alarms. I went through everything. I clarified whether it's handled, false alarm, something else, and I close the events. We don't need thousands of open alarms. It doesn't make sense, as well as loads up the system. So the ultimate goal would be click the button, close the alarm, and make it go away from the journal, and then we can keep going through other alarms. I want to show you a different example. I have a different system here, which has a license plate reader connected to it, and it's just so I can show you some of the additional info. You see I have a bunch of events here triggering for different plates, and here there is a difference by the fact that you can see some details that we didn't see somewhere else. Those additional details come from the third party. Here we have the plate number and the state and some other pieces of information. In access control, it can be the card holder details and his picture and so on. And we can still have the lane and see the car and see it coming through the lane, as well as a procedure on the other side to walk us through what we need to be doing when we see a suspected car or when we look for a certain plate that we need to know about. I know I'm going through this quite quickly. I just want to give you a feel. We'll do more in the follow-up webinars. So I'm going to continue and talk about our dashboard, and we're really proud of our dashboard. The dashboard in Valerus has been evolving since day one. And the idea behind the dashboard is for us to provide kind of a high level, what's going on in the system to the operator, to the administrator, to the person doing maintenance on the system, helping tech support in Vicon to help somebody that has a problem, and doing that in a way that would be easy and intuitive to follow, because there's a lot of information that gets generated, and there's a lot to say about how it's presented and how it allows the user to drill down and find their way to the information and resolve an issue if it's a technical issue. So I'm going to show you the things that we've added, and this is really a growing piece in Valerus. We keep adding more and more, trying to do that, expanding on capabilities, but also adding some statistics, other diagnostics, a lot of things that would come to the health side of the dashboard. And really the idea is to detect things proactively, things that we can alert about before they become a huge problem. And there's many things that are a growing problem. Will save time, will save money, and will save frustration for the customers. So the main screen in the dashboard, which I'm showing here, gives these tiles. And the goal, if you think of a big control room, and there's a lot of systems and a lot of cameras and a lot of things going on, we always tell our customers, dedicate one screen for the dashboard. Have always that monitor give you an overview of what's going on. And every tile here talks of a different part in Valerus, different module. And we look into them, and they all ideally should be white like this in the top, and should show no warnings and no errors, then indicate a healthy system. You can see down here in the cybersecurity area that I have a few warnings. We'll get into that later, but it is an indication that something is not completely right. Now, it is orange, it's not red. We do give you a little bit of a feel. Remember the traffic light analogy, we're using it in different places, but it's something needs to get attention. We'll get there real quick. I'm going to go through the modules that we've added and touch on the things that we've added to give you a little feel of that. Before I do that, I didn't mention, I'll mention it right now. If anybody has questions, please feel free to type them in the questions area. I will take live questions at the end of the presentations, and I'll try and answer as many as I can in the time that we have. So do feel free to type in your questions. I should have said it earlier, but it's not too late. Please go ahead and do that. So we're in the application server tile here, and you can see a lot of the graphs and a lot of the statistical information we had from before, but we've also added, and that's a pretty big thing for people that need to take that information and use it elsewhere, we've added export buttons on every one of the tiles, allowing to export the information in two formats. One would be in HTML format, which will export the image and the graph and all that. The other would be in Excel, which exports all the raw data in Excel. And like we know, once you have things in Excel, you can build your own graphs, you can save it for later, you can do your own function and comparison. So between the two, you can have a visual as well as the raw data to work on. So that's pretty useful. Down here, a few new additions. We're running an SQL server on our app server, and before we did track the RAM and CPU usage of the app server machine, but here we added two gauges that are tracking specifically the SQL server and the RAM and CPU for the server in specific. And this goes to certain behaviors that we've seen and things that happened in the field where they've shown us that sometimes that database works pretty hard and may become a problem for other performance areas. So knowing what the server itself uses versus the entire resources is an excellent resource for support and for our tech support when things don't work right. Another gauge goes to what we talked about, alarms. We do provide an indication of how many open alarms are in the system. And when we say open alarms in a nutshell, those are orphaned alarms that came into the system and really nobody's taking care of. Nobody took ownership, said he's going to handle them, or was assigned to use them. And if there's many, and we use the number 1,000 here, if we see that number reached, it means that there's a very large number of open alarms and not necessarily being handled correctly, or maybe a lot of false alarms that are flooding the system. So a pretty useful indication. And down here, last but not least, in Valerus, exporting the video is something that's done centrally and uses a certain drive space. And we've added an indication of the available drive space for that export, allowing the people looking at the dashboard to know if they're running out of export space. And they know that before they get stuck. I'm going into the NVR. I have just one NVR in my example here. So in the NVR, again, a lot of these gauges, a lot of this information is things that were here before. And what we've added for the NVR, for the recording hard drives, we've added a table here, and we communicate with these drives using Smart. And Smart is a piece of software very, very capable that runs on the drives themselves. And we can speak to the drive, so to say, and ask it about issues seen on the drive. And the drive will let us know of certain problems that it identifies. And it will tell us bad sectors or some things that are going on. And the advantage, we're talking about preventive maintenance, if we know a drive is showing certain behavior problems and it's already showing some bad sectors, it may be going downhill, we can replace the drive before it fades completely. So this is a very nice indicator. Right now, everything is showing okay, but it may not be the same later. On cameras, there's no new additions. I'll skip that, as well as the internet gateway, and I'll go to the cybersecurity tab. And I mentioned cybersecurity tab before. It looks a little different in terms of the tabs. We have users and devices here, and you can see that we have 3 alerts. In statistics, we just tell you who's logged into the system and from which computer, and allow you to log in out. The 3 alerts we've shown before, you can see we're talking about default password alert. And I have 3 users here in my little demo system, and for all of them, we're getting a default password alert. And really what we're trying to do here is tell you, Mr. Administrator, you have some users, and that same will be for cameras, by the way, that are using their default password. They never bother to change it. And using a default password is one of the biggest backdoors you can find on any system, because pretty much everybody knows the default passwords. And if somebody knows the default password, they can connect to the system as well and cause damage. So being able to go to the user admin or AOB and tell him, hey, you guys need to change your password, which you can even enforce from the system itself, is a pretty strong way to prevent the most basic backdoors into any type of system. Same goes for the cameras. They come out of the box, they have their default users and passwords. We want to prevent people from logging into the camera directly and maybe making changes and moving things around. What else do we show here? I'm not showing that in example, but I'll touch on that here. Multiple logins by the same users will be shown to you. So if me, the user guy, is shown that I logged in with my credentials from my office computer, as well as my home computer, that can be an innocent mistake where I left my office and I didn't log out. Or it could be that somebody has my credentials and is using them from somewhere. That may be very well worth knowing and making me change my password, or even going to that computer and seeing what's going on. Failed login attempt. So again, if I try and log in again and again, I forgot my password. It could be something that's completely naive, and I did forget my password and I need help. Or it could be somebody's trying to guess my password. So there's value in letting you know that something like that is going on. Use of default password, that's the example that we've shown, and that's for users as well as the devices connecting. Access attempts from unauthorized PCs. We talked about the access list option. So when we defined it, and now we find that somebody's trying to connect from a computer that's not authorized, why is somebody trying to use the computer in the storage area to log into the system and view video? Is that something he's supposed to do? Maybe I need to open it. Or is that someone trying to sit in the back, watch a game, and do that? Before I jump on to the next new option here on the dashboard, I did say that the cameras are also going to give us default password alerts. We do have a database in Valerus of the known usernames and passwords, and there's a lot of those in the cameras, and we're doing our best to tell you, even if it's our camera or a third-party camera, that somebody didn't change the password. A new addition to the dashboard and to Valerus is the activity map. And the activity map is here to give you an overview, calendar-based, so you can pick a day. Let's just go and pick a day here. Let's go to September 2nd, where I was working on some of these examples. And you can see that on that day, it's color-coded. Look up, above it. We had some activity done in the alarms area. We had some activity in the configuration area, and we had some activity in the map, in the monitoring area. And depending on how you manage the system, this is cross-system. This is not just one computer that's across the system. Depending on how you manage your system, this gives you a very, very easy way to know which areas of Valerus were in use and which areas weren't in use. Some are not supposed to be accessed. Some are supposed to be accessed and maybe have not been. We're going to show you some details and some cool stuff that we can do using this the screen, and how it allows you to take advantage of it and learn about the activities and the changes in the system. That's going to be in the follow-up webinars as well. So we're coming to the end of this webinar, and I do want to take a few questions. So if you give me a second, I'm going to open my question bar here and see a couple of questions. So there is a question about the access list, and will administrators receive notifications when an unauthorized device? Right now, it comes to the dashboard. You can get it through the dashboard. You can't get it over an email yet, and we do plan on allowing the system to send you some of the notifications, absolutely. A question about the integration framework. Are the LPR and access control capabilities built into Valerus? And do I have to pay for them? So the answer is no on both. There is a need to add those systems. We didn't build all of those into Valerus, and we're not charging anything in advance. If you need an access control system, right now it's VAX, we'll be adding more, LPR, and so on. You need that third-party system added, and then the integration framework would be the tool to communicate with. Question about the access list. If I want to temporarily block access from a computer, example, if I have an employee on vacation, can I do something temporary? Yes, once a computer is defined in the access list, there is a toggle that you can turn on and off. There's no schedule. You'll need to go there and do it manually at this time, and we may add a schedule for it later. That's a good question. A question about the alarms. Is the additional information box for third-party integration only? Yes, at this time, that's a dedicated tile for integrated systems. We plan on doing some other things with it later on, but right now, yes, it is definitely a dedicated tile. With respect to the system overload, are we concerned with CPU overload or GPU overload? So Valerus is primarily a CPU user and not a GPU user at this time. We are working on some GPU capabilities. The idea behind the gauge is that we provide some kind of combined picture. So depending on what we use, if and when, which is very soon, the GPU will come into play, we intend to show a number which relates to both. So the load will be some kind of combination that will tell you the PC is loaded and not necessarily this part or the other part. I'll take one more question here. By the way, the questions that I can't get to, we have a lot. I apologize, but we will answer them in writing. You said that we can upgrade for free. I didn't say that yet, but I will. There's one of our guys. So upgrades, let's talk about that quickly. Valerus, and that's part of what we do very different. I did say in the beginning that we try and make the upgrades easy. So upgrades are free in Valerus. And when we upgrade, which is available for you guys not using 21.1, you can go to the website, get 21.1 and upgrade, regardless of what your system status is. We don't charge for those upgrades. What we provide with the upgrades is the ability to run the latest code, receive all the bug fixes, and actually receive a nice a list of enhancements that we deemed non-license worthy. Those of you that have our upgrade protection plan, it's not a support plan. Don't be mistaken and think that we're charging for support. You're getting your upgrades and you're getting your support, but we offer an upgrade protection plan for those that want to get all the features for free. So if you upgrade today for free to 21.1, you get all the bug fixes and everything that that you've done before. that you had before will work, as well as some enhancements that we're going to throw in. If you have an upgrade protection plan in place in your license, in that central license that we saw in the beginning, that upgrade protection plan will also unlock all the new features. So that's definitely something to think about, but is not something we force anybody to buy in order to get his bug fixes and his enhancement. That's a big difference. So charge-wise, you get the version for free along with all the fixes. If you have a protection plan, which you paid for in advance, you get the new features, no questions asked. If you want a new feature, and some people just want to make the decision ad hoc, we also allow you to buy the unlocks at that time. So all options are open and extremely easy to use. Question about the dashboard, can we open on a dedicated monitor so we have a constant health? Yes, and we actually highly recommend doing that. So that dashboard tab, and I assume that's the question, you can drag it away from the main screen, and you can show it up on any other monitor. Valerus supports up to 4 monitors today. We expect to have more. I do see another great question I want to touch on, and then I'm going to conclude the webinar. Will Google Chrome ever work on Valerus? So we do offer our extension for Chrome still. We just released support for Microsoft Edge as a solution for Valerus, and we do expect to work on Chrome sometime next year. We expect to have an updated client for the browsers that will be cross-browser. So today your options are to use IE11 if you used it before, Microsoft Edge, and Chrome will be coming soon. The rest of the questions, I promise, we'll answer them and send them to everybody participating here on the webinar. And I'm going to thank you for joining us. I'm going to mention that there are 2 follow-up webinars, not 1. So look at our webinar schedules and please sign up. Each one is going to touch on the deeper aspects and the more technical, how do we configure, how do we do that, how do we make Valerus do it for me type of solution on the features that we've shown. And we'll be really, really happy to see you all on those webinars and for you to join us again. Thank you again for joining us. See you soon.